one of the hardest positions to be in, Mark, as a goalkeeper. I believe being in that position before, you would empathise as well in the situation that Kepa is in now, wouldn't you, Mark?
Yeah, it's really tough. Obviously, there's been a lot of debate, a lot of discussions regarding Kepa. Obviously, David De Gea is another one that's come under the spotlight for his inconsistent form. But for Kepa, yeah, it's been tough, really, really tough. And I have to say though as well, I think his front four, the players in front of him haven't been great either. There's been a lot of chopping and changing, so that's even added to the difficulty for Kepa. When as a goalkeeper, as a team, what you want is consistency. You want players in the same positions week in, week out. You want to build a relationship. You want to get into a rhythm. And at Chelsea, particularly over the last 12 to 18 months, that hasn't happened too often. There's been a lot of chopping and changing. And then when you go through a bit of a rut in form, I think that the constant chopping and changing makes it even more difficult. You're not getting the cover that you normally would expect. Particularly when I was at Fulham, I had Britta Hangeland and Aaron Hughes in front of me pretty much every week. And we built a really strong relationship. They knew when I was going to come for something. If I did, they covered me. And vice versa. I knew their strengths and weaknesses, and we covered each other week in, week out. And that makes a big difference.
But, I mean, when you hear those criticisms, do you think that there's some validity to the criticisms, Mark?
Yeah, of course. Listen, I think he has struggled for form. And it's a tough gig, like Peter was saying. It's a tough job to play in or position to play in. You are the last line of defence. You make a mistake like he made last week with his feet, and it leads 99.9% of the time it leads to a goal. And as a goalkeeper, at any level, the ideal scenario is to make as few mistakes as possible. The top goalkeepers, you can count on one hand how many mistakes they make in a season, sometimes 2 seasons, and that's the difference. And I think he's made too many mistakes that have led directly to goals. I think he hasn't had a lot of cover that have also allowed teams to have a lot of shots from distance, but he has also been exposed. And I think he's got a slight technical flaw. He's moving with his feet, or inability to move with his feet. I don't think he's been particularly great with it. There's a number of things that I find that he's struggled with. And I think he's struggled with the adaptation from La Liga, a smaller club, to a massive club like Chelsea, and the expectations and the pressure that go with that.
Do you think that perhaps some kind of, you would kind of look at the different systems as well that Kepa's had to play under Sarri and now under Lampard as well, Mark?
The system is again, that comes into it. But I think the more you have the same players in front of you, or the majority of times the same pairing of centre-halves maybe in front of you, whether it's a John Terry or Gary Cahill for a long time at Chelsea, or then David Luiz when he was in front of him. I think what you need that consistency, and they certainly haven't had it. The changing of systems on top of not having the regular lineup in front of you, that then just added a double whammy. And I think that's made it even more difficult for not just Kepa. I think it's made it really difficult for all of the Chelsea players.
But I think it's just a steep decline that's kind of got everyone kind of hounding on him right now. I mean, do you think Chelsea is regretting that decision to get Kepa? I mean, looking at the price tag and looking at the expectations that came with him, to say his performance has been underwhelming would be kind of putting it a bit kind, wouldn't it, Mark?
Yeah, of course. I mean, the unfortunate thing is, it's not Kepa's fault that they paid £70-odd million for him. And immediately, the minute he walks in that door, the pressure is there because of the sheer number of the figure that they paid for him. And all of a sudden, the whole world's attention is on him. And then you look at goalkeepers like Ederson, that they paid £35 million for. At the time, was a lot of money. But he's been worth that and probably double that, triple that. Alisson, they paid close to the Kepa price tag. So there's almost like a direct comparison there in Alisson v Kepa. And when you look at Alisson's performances over Kepa's, I mean, there's light and day between it. There's no comparison. So the criticism then is intensified because of that. So it's tough. It's tough when things are not going so well. It's tough for a player to get themselves out of a mental slump. let alone the external pressures that go with that.
Of course, it's hard to gain confidence when the world is waiting for your next mistake as well. But of course, now they've signed Edouard Mendy from Rennes. I mean, Peter, do you think he's an upgrade to Kepa?
I wouldn't think so, to be honest. Has Mendy played in a big club, Rennes in France? I'm not sure. But, you know, games against Marseille, Paris Saint-Germain, Bordeaux, Lyon, those teams, I'm sure he's played. He knows what pressure is like. But Premier League is another level. But now, again, Premier League is not as it used to be. There are no fans, and fans create a great atmosphere. You know, sometimes you can be in goal right behind a very loud away game, you know, home support. So those are things, but, you know, it's part of the job. But every country is different. It depends on how you settle in. As Mark said, psychologically, sometimes it's so difficult to come back after a big mistake, because in football, big mistakes are hardly forgotten. And often, especially goalkeepers, they will forget a lot you've done if you did one terrible mistake that everybody is laughing about. And today, those things just get even worse with social media. And you are human, regardless of how you want to put that behind you. You will still have a look at what people are saying, and if it's still out there, newspapers will be there to remind you of it. So there's no hiding place, you know. So you want to make sure right from the start you did well, you know, and that takes a bit of bravery to do so. But obviously, Chelsea is a big club. They don't just recruit players without proper homework, and I'm sure they see him, you know, as somebody that could serve the club for many years.
So how do you think Mendy will be serving the club then, Mark? Will he be a replacement for Caballero as a number 2, or will he kind of push Kepa on, or are they going to play Kepa and Mendy rotating, or do you think Mendy will be a regular starter?
Well, I think the answer to that question was pretty obvious tonight. The fact that he left Kepa out of the side, played Willy Caballero in goal. Listen, I think Willy Caballero has been a great servant to the game. I think I think he's a really good number 2. I don't see him as number 1 for Chelsea. So for me, Mendy comes straight into the side. What's interesting are his stats. You know, you look at his stats. He's come from the same club that Petr Cech came from when they signed him at Chelsea, and he's actually got overall better stats than Petr Cech. He's a player that's 28 years old. He's big. He's 1 meter 96, on 1 meter 97 actually. He commands his 8-yard box. So he's going back to that kind of style, that profile of a goalkeeper that has made Chelsea so successful in your Thibaut Courtois, your Petr Cechs. So the big question is, like Peter mentioned, is the step up. How is he going to adjust from Rennes? And not trying to be disrespectful to Rennes, but to then stepping up to play for Chelsea in the Premier League. What he does have in his favour is his age. He's an international, a regular international for Senegal. And the price tag is nowhere near as big a pressure as with Kepa.
But the pressure is, of course, that he has to do better than Kepa then. So where does this leave Kepa? I mean, do you see him being a Chelsea player still at the end of this transfer window? Mark?
I think if he had an avenue to get out, I think he would leave. I think it'd be really tough for him to go. If you look around, where is there a club that are looking for a goalkeeper? The likely in today's climate as well. I think the likelihood of him moving would only be maybe via loan, but I just don't see an opening for him at the moment. I think he said publicly that he wants to stay and fight for his position, and I wouldn't be surprised if that were to happen, and at very least stay until January, because who knows, Mendy may come in and it may not work for him either, and you know, things can change really quickly. You know, players get injured, lack of form, and he could find himself back in the team, and then he's got to take his opportunity if he gets it.
But you do have to consider the fact that, I mean, you've been in this similar situation, Mark. He's got to think about, he's in his prime years, he's got to think about the Euros that's coming up next year as well. I mean, a lot of things to consider for him, Mark.
Absolutely. Well, first and foremost for Kepa is to try and find some form. How do you find form if you're not playing? It's impossible to do it. All he can do is go on the training field and work on his game. You know, try and take time away from the team. And I think if he like what I'm expecting is he's going to be replaced. I think he's going to have to use that opportunity, hopefully, to try and find himself a little bit, try and take the pressure off him a little bit, clear his head, get back to the training field and do some extra sessions, work on his game, try and slowly rebuild his confidence and wait for the next opportunity. I think Kepa will get an opportunity to play in a cup game, and then he has to show why Chelsea paid so much money for him.
Where do you stand on this then, Peter? Should Kepa stay or go?
Oh yeah, he has to stay because they need competition. As Mark said, injuries can come in. Caballero is not, is a great goalkeeper. I'm not sure exactly his age, but he's, done great for the game of football. But, a club like this needs at least 3 proper goalkeepers. And I'm sure even the number 4, the young guys training with them, opportunities sometimes. It's happened before in football. One is injured, one got a red card, and something happened with the number 3, and all of a sudden a young kid, I think we had that a few times in my career, has to be in goal, and perform. So and today with COVID and all this, you never know. So I don't think he's going anywhere.